Today I want to talk about a personal experience of how I was finally able to save money. And I'm calling this breaking the cycle because I think that's definitely what encompasses my experience growing up. Cycles of deciding to save, then failing to save and going back to not saving. When I started this channel, my idea was to use my own personal experience of learning about personal finance to help others. And I think this story might be very familiar to some of you, and I know that other people who shared their experience with me online have helped me, so I'm hoping to do the same here. So I want to take you back to an experience that I had a long time ago now. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I was in my little student room, sitting on my bed, and I was incredibly nervous as I dialed my bank on the phone. I was waiting for the bank to pick up, and I remember thinking, how did I get to this point? I was staring at my banking app at the same time as waiting for the bank to pick up, and I just couldn't believe that I was 4,000 euros in debt. What I mean by that is that my credit card had a 4,000 euro charge on it, and that was going to be deducted from my current account in about 3 days. My current account already had a balance of about minus 200 euros as well, so I was in big trouble. Before I called the bank, I'd called my parents, and I asked them if they were willing to help me pay for this credit card bill that I wasn't expecting, and that I would do anything I could to pay them back. I would get an extra job. I would do anything to pay them back, but they simply just said they can't help me. And it's not that they didn't want to help me, they just didn't have the money to help me. So that feeling of calling the bank for help, my plan was to kind of plead with them and say, is there anything I can do to get like a way to pay this in installments? Because I already had a 200 euro overdraft on my current account, and I still had to pay for my rent, utilities, my university fees, and groceries for that month. So then the bank finally picked up, and I told them my situation. It was probably very incoherent because I was so nervous, but their answer was very, very straightforward. They couldn't do anything. There was nothing they could do to keep my credit card bill from hitting my current account, meaning that they were going to take the 4,000 euros from my current account in the next few days. And I just thought, this is it. Like, I'm not sure what's going to happen right now. I felt incredibly ashamed. I remember not wanting to tell anyone around me that this is what was happening. And I just couldn't believe that that was the situation that I was in. And I think it's useful to tell you how that happened, how that credit card bill ended up being 4,000 euros without me expecting that. I'd just come back from a trip to New Zealand with two other students from my university. We flew to New Zealand for 3 months to work on our bachelor's thesis, the end of year 3, and I'd saved up for this trip. And I kind of budgeted in my head how much I had to spend. But because it was the first time that I was using a credit card for all my transactions, I wasn't used to this fact that it doesn't come out of your current account, it comes out of a different account. That's something I'd never had to really deal with, so I'm guessing somehow I just didn't realize that that money was still gonna come out my current account. I thought I'd already paid for that. So in short, I think the answer to how did I end up there is that I wasn't financially literate. I didn't have any savings. I didn't have an emergency fund. I didn't even know what that was at this point. And the thing is, I'd been in situations like this before, but never with this amount of money. Luckily though, I was in the situation where my mum called me back and told me to call my grandmother. My grandmother ended up lending me this 4,000 euros, and my plan was to pay it back to her as quickly as I could. So I got an extra job at the university, and I managed to pay her back in about 3 months. And this idea that I could come up with 4,000 euros in 3 months, even though before that kind of money just sounded like a crazy amount of money to me, kind of sparked something in me. I decided after the 3 months I was gonna continue to work and save up as if I was indebted to my grandmother, so I could start saving up for kind of to have savings for the first time in my life. And that went really well for about 6 months. I put some money in my savings. I was really proud of this savings account, but about 6 months later, I was back to zero. I'd burned through those savings without even really being able to tell you what I spent it on. So I was really just, in that moment, I really didn't understand. How did I end up in a situation like this again? Like, how is this money kind of getting away from me without me being consciously aware of it? And that was really my wake-up call on my personal finance journey. So when looking back to this point in my life now, I know that this was because of two things. One, I didn't really grow up with this idea of needing to have savings, needing to have an emergency fund. And two, I'd never really read anything about personal finance. I always held on to the idea that after university I would have a well-paying job and I would start saving then. But this experience really made me realize that if I wasn't saving when I had a little amount of money, I wasn't going to save when I had a well-paying job. So something needed to change, because this wasn't a maths problem that I was having. It was a behavioral problem. But eventually I did end up saving a lot of money. I ended up really realizing what the value is of having an emergency fund, and I wanted to do everything I could to pay off not only the 4,000 euros that I've paid off, but also my overdraft and some other stuff that I had outstanding. And here are the three things that it took for me to finally break that cycle and to start saving. So number one, like I said, it wasn't a maths problem, it was a behavioral problem. So I first started with this idea of saving something each month. And this really, the amount that I was saving, it doesn't really matter. The idea here was that I was gonna just save something and not touch that. This behavior change of not getting money and spending it immediately. This allowed me to build self-trust. So for 3 months I did this. I just saved anything that was in my current account and I didn't touch it. Then, when that behavior was a bit more normal to me, I started saving would-have purchases. And this, for example, for me meant that I would walk down the shopping street, I would see a pair of shoes that I really wanted, and I then looked at the price, decided that I wasn't going to buy the shoes, and transfer that amount of money from my current account to my savings. The third step that I took was then to move on to saving a percentage of whatever came in. Once I had these habits in place and was kind of used to this new way of looking at money, I started saving a percentage of my income. This allowed me to scale up my savings as my income grew, and made sure that once I graduated university, I wasn't just going to spend all of that like I did as a student, but that I was just going to save a set percentage of my income no matter what. So as a last point, if you're watching this to get advice for your own situation, I want to talk a bit about consistency and sticking to something, because you can kind of see this, in my opinion, just like a fitness class or fitness goal. There are so many different ways out there to get fit, to get healthy, to lose weight. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. It matters that you choose one that you can actually stick to. So instead of looking at really lofty goals and deciding that all of a sudden you're going to save an X amount of money, which you've never done before, I would suggest to start small. Start building this behavior over time, and then you can start adjusting your goal to keep the savings sustainable and meaningful. All right, I hope you enjoyed this a bit more personal video. I'm a bit uncomfortable with sharing these personal stories, but if this helped you or if you resonated with this, please let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.